Thanks for tuning in, and I'm your host, Bianca Cotton, and this is Behind the Confident Smile with a live studio audience. Thank you all for being here. On this special episode, I'll be sitting in conversation and community with three phenomenal women to discuss a battle that Black women are fighting silently: fibroids. Uterine fibroids, non-cancerous growths in the uterus, affect up to 80% of Black women by age 50. We will explore the stories, the science, and the solutions while amplifying the voices of Black women. My first guest is board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist with more than 15 years of experience in the field, Dr. Cordia Clark-White. Welcome to Behind the Confident Smile.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to Black women and health. So let's dig into that. If you go back to your earliest memory as a child, did you always want to be a doctor?
I was 2 years old. My mother told me, I told her I wanted to be a doctor. So
Really?
I've always wanted to be a doctor, yes.
Where did you get the idea from, if you remember at 2?
I don't remember, but I remember seeing different TV shows and things like that. And I've just always wanted to help people. And so I chose to be a doctor. And I've always said it, and nothing has ever stopped me.
What made you follow through? Because we can say a lot of things as a kid, but the follow through part.
The follow through. I had good support, good family support. I was actually the first of 5 children to go to college. My parents didn't go to college either, but I had their support and they knew what I wanted to do, and they pushed me and helped me to do it. Going to church helped as well. I had that family support at the church as well.
Amen. Okay, first of 5, all right, first generation college student, and you chose to be an OB-GYN.
Yes,
Great. So we're here to talk about this silent health, which almost to me sounds like an epidemic for Black women. So tell us, what are fibroids? Like what is it?
Fibroids come from an overgrowth of the outer layer of the uterus, so it's the muscle layer of the uterus, and it grows and it replicates on itself and it forms these masses. The mass can just kind of hang out on the outside of the uterus. It can go into the wall of the uterus and even start to push in the cavity of the uterus. They're very common. The problem is we don't know why they come, but we know that there are different things that increase the risk. Unfortunately, being Black is one of the risks. We find it, you said, by 50 years old, 80%. Actually, by 35, 50%. So then it increases by 50 to 80%. We know that having a lower vitamin D level increases your risk. Obesity increases the risk. We find a genetic link. If there's a closer relative that had it, you have an increased risk of having it. There are a lot of things, hormones. So we tend to start our periods younger as Black women, and so being exposed to those hormones increase your risk as well.
So with all of these risk factors that often plague the Black community, obesity, when I think about communities, especially on the South and West sides that do not have grocery stores, where the gas stations are the grocery stores, it's more fast food options. What do you tell Black women who come into your office and talk about the symptoms that they are experiencing? And if you can share, what are some symptoms of fibroids?
Well, first of all, you can have a fibroid and don't have any symptoms. A lot of times we might do surgery for a different reason and we find a fibroid. The symptoms are increased bleeding. You can have the increased bleeding during your regular period. It can be heavier. You can have longer periods, spotting in between your periods, pain with sex, bleeding with sex. And sometimes I find like my patients, African American female patients, they feel like they're not being heard when they have these symptoms. They feel like, I'm gonna give you, I had a patient, 27 years old. She came to me, she looked like she was about 35 weeks pregnant. And she was a small patient. And she was actually going to a well-known facility, hospital in the Chicago area. And they were treating her with Depo. But she had this huge fibroid that needed to be removed. So I always tell the patient it's so important to make your doctor listen to you. It's important to make the doctor treat you differently as individual patients and not just group you just because of how you look. And that's what's very important.
So would you recommend someone stay with a doctor that's not listening to them?
No, I do not.
So when does a Black woman say, all right, enough is enough? It's that after they say some once, twice, 3 times.
I've actually gotten patients who have had surgery for something and they don't even know why they've had surgery. So I think it's important to educate our patient. And even before she becomes the patient, because they can go so long with the doctor, just trusting them because they're the doctor. So even in the homes, it's just important for the education. It's important for them to see someone like me who looks like them, which is another reason I love being a doctor. My patients, they look like me. My patients, they go through the same things I go through. So I should be able to make them feel comfortable enough that they can come and they can tell me anything and not be ashamed. And they can feel like that I'm going to listen to them and they're going to be heard. And it's going to be an individual visit based on that patient, not based on the patient maybe I saw 15 minutes before or something like that.
You sound like an anomaly.
We're getting there.
You know, we need a lot of change within the medical field as far as just listening.
Yep.
Simply listening without bias, without the lens of racism,
Yep.
without the lens of you can take it,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
So in terms of treatment options, but even before getting to treatment options, what should happen when a Black woman comes in and say, I'm experiencing heavier periods, and et cetera, and et cetera? What's the next step that a doctor should say and take?
And some of the other things the patient might say, they might say, I was just talking to someone not too long ago. She said she kept telling her doctor that her jeans were fitting tighter. So that can be a sign because the uterus is getting bigger because of the fibroids. The next step should just at least be an exam. After the exam, there's some imaging that should be done. Whether or not you feel anything on the exam, we have to go further and find out what's causing these. It's not just pushing medications. It's not even just jumping right to surgery because each patient is different. And the fibroids can be located differently and there's different treatments for it. And you did ask me the different treatments. Medical management is really just treating the symptoms of the fibroids. And sometimes depending on what you want, maybe you want to maintain your uterus, maybe you don't want surgery, and maybe that's all you need. They're not too big where you need surgery. So it depends on the patient, but then there's surgery. Surgery can be minimally invasive. It doesn't have to be that old big scar. And you should, as a patient, you should seek out these things and you should not stop until you find all the answers and what you want.
So minimum invasive surgery is one option. What are some other options?
So minimally invasive surgery is one. And when I say minimally invasive, we can take out a uterus with a robot. You don't have to have the big scar that goes from here to here. You can have a small scar at your umbilicus and 2 small scars around that. And then we could just push it through the vagina and you could actually go home that same day.
With a robot?
With the robot. Yeah.
So the robot's coming to take the jobs?
Well, we have to operate the robot, so the robot still needs us. Or you can stand right next to the bed and do that same type of procedure as well. But sometimes it might be too big for that, so you do need that scar. Sometimes we can just go in if it's just the fibroid or not just the fibroid, but if it's a fibroid inside the uterine cavity, you can just go through the vagina and remove the fibroid, and you don't need any scars. There's a radiofrequency procedure you can do to shrink the fibroids. There's a laser procedure you can do to shrink the fibroids. There's so many different options, and if your physicians, if you're interested in one of the options and your physician does not perform that, that physician should make it available for you through another physician.
Can people shrink the fibroids with diet?
So there are some studies being done with that. There are studies with, and I don't negate any of those. I'm interested in herbs as well, because medicine changes all the time, it evolves. There are studies been done with different herbs that can do it. But again, each patient is different. Each fibroid is different as well, so you have to consider all of that.
In your 15 plus year experience, how many patients have you seen more than once? What I mean by that is they had a procedure, but the fibroids came back. What's the likelihood of that?
So as long as you have a uterus, your fibroids can come back. They're less likely to come back once we go through menopause because those hormones are not there, but they can come back. The laser procedure I've done a few times, and I have had patients come back and eventually have a hysterectomy. But I've also had patients who are very happy with the laser procedure. I've had patients come back because they decided they didn't want surgery and they wanted to try the medical management and it didn't work. I've had patients come back because they didn't get what they wanted, or come to me because they didn't get what they wanted or what they thought they needed from their other physician.
What would you tell the mothers and grandmothers, right? The mamas, the big mamas, as they are watching over the younger women in their families about fibroids?
I would tell them that it's important to, I feel like for us, our parents, my parents, I feel like they didn't like to go to the hospital. They didn't like to go to the doctor. So it's important to educate them, to let them know to go to the doctor, to let them know to demand from their doctor to be heard, to be, to get what they want, to not just settle, say, oh, the doctor said this, so this must be true. There's so much out there as far as education. And sometimes I'll get that patient, well, Google said this. And it's okay. I welcome it, actually. That's my opportunity to actually educate the patient. And to know something before you go see the doctor, know something about your body, know something about your condition, so that you can ask those educated questions.
So being the advocate.
Yes.
Finding your voice.
Yes.
Doing your own research. And also I would add finding someone to go with you.
Yes.
Because sometimes it may be intimidating if you never advocated for something to a healthcare professional before and just continue to believe what they say.
And there's more than one doctor out there.
Yes. We didn't even get a chance to talk about the insurance and the barriers that come along with finding physicians, but as we wrap up our time together, and what would you advise other medical professionals who suppress Black women's voices?
I would advise them to look at the patient as an individual, not to treat the patient or talk to the patient based on adverse history, things that they might have, or even things, sometimes it's not even like, it's just out of ignorance, they might not know. To be educated if you're going to treat those patients. And then if you don't know, as the physician, it's your responsibility to find out. Otherwise, it's your responsibility to make other providers available to that patient.
So it sounds like they need a network of people
Absolutely.
to tap into.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal. Is that something that you have created for yourself?
A network of people to tap into?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I have mentors. I still consider myself a young physician, although my residents don't. But I have those go-tos for the same thing. And I think I teach my residents that it's very important to know your limitations. It's just as important to know your limitations as it is to be a good as it is to know to do the things you do well, because that makes you a better physician. And then you're not trying to do things that you should not be doing, and that's when you get in trouble. So as far as educating the patient and treating the patient, that's just as important.
Phenomenal. So we need you out here pounding the pavement more. Seriously. Educate the people.
Yep.
Starting here today, right? Awesome, awesome. Well, Dr. Clark-White, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your years of experience with us and advocacy and seeing us, right?
Yes.
Being one that sees yourself and sees others. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
On the other side of the break, we'll meet Adreiona Jennings and learn more about her lived experience with fibroids. Stay with us.
I'm Francia Garcia Hernandez, host of the program Presente. Local groups are rediscovering ancestral and indigenous practices in Chicago. Can these important traditions be a part of modern healthcare? Find out on the next episode of Presente. Join us on November 7 at 7 p.m. via Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org and the CanTV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Since 2015, Adreiona Jennings has been dedicated to working with youth and young adults at local nonprofit organizations on Chicago's west and south sides. She's passionate about helping create leaders and letting youth know they have a voice. Adreiona knows firsthand the physical and emotional toll that fibroids can take on a woman's life. After years of suffering from symptoms, she made the brave decision to undergo surgery and have her fibroids removed, actually 13 of them, you all. So welcome to Behind the Confident Smile, Adreiona.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and telling us about these 13 fibroids.
Honey.
Like, wow.
Yes. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're not going to start at that point, but I just wanted to say that.
Yes.
Like, 13?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some were in the uterus, some were out the uterus, and some were like in and out. Like, yeah.
Deep.
An experience.
I'm sure.
Yes.
When did you first notice something was happening in your body? How old were you and how long ago was that?
Well, Bianca, a woman doesn't tell her age.
I tried.
Right, but so I would go for my yearly checkups to my gynae, and I do remember one checkup. She was just kind of like, "Huh," and I'm like, "You know, you don't during the middle of an exam. Like, what is going on?"
Right.
So then she asked me, she's like, "Do you notice if your periods are heavier?" And I was like, "Yeah, they've been heavier, but nothing too common." She was just like, "Okay, well, I see something going on, but we'll keep an eye on it," and that was it. So then I go back the following year, and she's like, "Well, you have fibroids, but it's nothing to worry about." And I'm like, "Did you know this last exam and you did not communicate this with me?" And in that year time frame, my periods were very heavy. Like, I was going through a pad an hour. I was anemic. I would lay in bed the weekends and just literally just be bleeding. I had migraines. My pants were tight. And then eventually, she was like, "You do have fibroids. You have 13. And I'm like,
You didn't know this last year?
right. Or the year before. Like, what is? So she actually ended up telling me my uterus was the size of a woman that was 6 months pregnant. And And I was like, this is not, and not to be, aesthetically, because people were asking me, they're like, oh, are you pregnant? And women don't want to hear that. I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. I'm very much not pregnant. So I made the decision like, okay, it's time to get the surgery. Because I was past the point of, there wasn't going to be an herbal remedy for me. It was a decision that I had to make.
So let me back up. Did you fire her?
We had a very tough conversation. I had been going to her since my early 20s. So we had a relationship, and I just was kind of taken aback as to why
she Black?
She is not Black. She is Indian.
Okay.
And her solution to me getting rid of the fibroids, if you will, was have a baby. That's what she told me. Just have a baby.
Is that a real solution?
It's not. It's not, because the baby is fighting for space in the uterus, especially if I have some in the uterus, the baby will not be able to grow.
And you didn't fire her.
Right. So I remember at one of my exams, she's like, just have a baby. And I was like, ma'am, that's not a solution. And then I went back for another exam, and she, again, connected, well, what if you, because I told her, I was like, can you just take everything? Like, I'm okay. And she's like, no, because what if you meet someone and you want to have a baby? And I sat up and I was like, why won't you listen to me? And why are you connecting my body to a man? Like, if I'm telling you I don't want to have children, or if I'm okay with not having children, why are you pushing this? And then I recognized in that moment, I believe it's a value system thing. Because in Indian culture, women are supposed to have children, they're supposed to get married. And I recognized, oh, you're coming from your lens.
And her biases.
So I did go to a different doctor because that wasn't going to work.
Good for you.
I did.
Her well-intentioned did not equal good results.
Exactly. But what's interesting is with the other doctor, she was like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. It's your body. And then I was like, wait. Then I'm faced with like, oh, so I can make my own decisions? So it's almost like, when you're a kid and you ask your mom, like, can I go outside? And you think she's going to fight. And she's like, no, go ahead. And you're like, what's the catch? Like, that's what I felt like, what is my, so then I had to have a lot of conversations with my therapist, because I was like, what do I do? Like, do I make the decision to get a hysterectomy? Do I, where do I go from there? And there is something called empty womb syndrome. So it's women who, even if they have children and they get a hysterectomy, they will grieve the loss of their womb. And I had never heard of that before. And so she was like, you have to make the best decision for you, Adreiona. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. So I made the decision to get the fibroids removed, but keep the uterus.
How long did you wrestle with that decision to either take it all or just?
It was a few months. I think I found out how big, my uterus was and how many I had maybe in May. And then I made the decision to get the surgery in October. So a couple months, and I was crying and praying and just all the things like, what should I do? And, like, Lord, I'm okay if I have children, and I'm okay if I do or I don't, I'm okay. But I recognize, like, let's just get the surgery and keep everything else.
So walk us through what type of surgery did you have?
So as the doctor mentioned, I got the robot surgery, laparoscopic, right? The robot surgery. So they went through the belly button, and then they made 2 incisions on the side. And essentially what they do is they just kind of cut the fibroids out. If they're big, they'll cut them and then just pull them out of your either belly button or your sides. I was right on the cusp, because one was so large that it almost would not come out of my belly button, and they would have had to do the actual,
the C-section type
right. And so she told me, like, when I came out of surgery, she was like, you were right on the I was like, girl, I'm glad I made it. I'm glad I made it.
Wow. So as you are opening your eyes post-surgery, what are your initial thoughts or feelings? So
I initially was taken aback by how long the surgery. They told me the surgery was going to take 2 hours. It took 4 hours. So because she said that they just kind of kept finding, like, she was like, there were some that were half in, half out. And that's very delicate, because she's trying to minimize scar tissue, and we don't want to have to take the uterus and bleeding. Like, there was just so much that went into the process. And it was supposed to be 2 hours. So I looked at the clock. I was like, it's 5 o'clock. That was the first thing in my mouth. And I was like, am I okay? And she was like, you're okay. Because I'm like, I didn't know if a complication happened. And she's like, you're fine. I stayed in the recovery for a little bit. My bladder would not wake up. So I had to get a catheter. What
does that mean?
So when you're under anesthesia for so long, your organs kind of, like, I don't say shut down, but they rest. They kind of reset, if you will. And my, everything was waking up, but my bladder would not wake up. So my bladder was full, but I couldn't actually go to the bathroom. So she's like, we're going to have to give you a catheter. And I was like, I don't want a catheter. I don't, because I don't want the experience. So they ended up giving me a catheter, and she's like, you could take it out tomorrow morning at 5. Girl, I was up at 4:30, like 5 o'clock, come on. But as soon as, not to get graphic, but when they put the catheter in, my bladder started emptying. And then I had my post-op. I had my surgery on a Monday. I thought I was fine, right? Because
yeah, let's talk about that.
We're going to talk about
it.
We
talked about that offline. Let's bring that here.
I had my surgery on a Monday, and I thought I was okay, and I went to work out on Saturday. Oh, no. I know.
Tell her.
I'm at the gym like, I'm fine, I got this.
Can we pause and say strong black woman syndrome?
Oh, heavy.
And I can do it?
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I'm fine. And as soon as I finished my workout, I was in so much pain. And I was like, what was I doing?
What was you thinking about?
Who did I think I was?
And why didn't nobody stop you?
Nobody
Did you
stopped
tell
me.
Anybody you were going to the gym?
I did. I was going to go to the gym. And my friends know me, and they know you have to learn. Like, you don't listen.
You hard here.
I am. They're like, okay, Adreiona. Of course, they advised against it, but they're like, go ahead. And I called them. I was like, I'm in so much pain. They're like, right, now sit your butt down somewhere. So I finished the workout, and then I had my 10-day check-in that following week, and my doctor, she went in on me. She was like, why would you think you're okay? You had major surgery, like your uterus is not healed. And I was like, oh. And in that process, I learned so much about myself. Like, even with my physical healing, why didn't I think I deserved rest? Like, I'm trying to do all of this and go. And I went back to work early, and I'm trying to be all of the things. And I'm like, Adreiona, you're not even okay. And that was a process. And I believe I went through that process for a reason.
Why didn't you think you deserved to rest?
It's that black woman thing. I was like, I feel fine. We very much say, I feel fine, right? Like, I'm okay. I can, I'm not laying up nowhere. And I'm like, no, that's not okay. And then how that even connects to our emotional health, right? We just try to keep going. Somebody passes away. Okay, we got to keep going. But no, we have to take our rest. And I was like, I deserve this rest too.
Yeah. So how long did you allow yourself to rest before going back to work early?
I gave myself, I did take 6 weeks. I was going to take 12 though, so.
You cut in half. Adreiona.
I was like, they need me.
Nobody needs you that bad.
And so I tried to, this is how I try to rationalize it. I'll just work remotely, right? So.
And HR let you come back?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Okay. Need some new HR. No, seriously, that's a lot to unpack while your body is experiencing this stress, right? And this change. Your mind and your emotions are like, I got this because I've done X before, or because of this, or I've survived that, so I can survive this. What would you tell that Adreiona now?
Oof. Girl, rest. I would really say, like, it's okay to not have to do it all. And I know there's a term going around now called soft life. Like, oh, we want to live a soft life. But I really mean, like, I don't want to toil. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to have to fight and grind. Like, things should be easy for us, especially as black women. We deal with so much. And so if I'm like, hey, Adreiona, I need, you need 12 weeks off, I'm taking every single day and not feeling guilty about it either.
That part.
That is what I would tell that Adreiona. Even leading up to that with like the bleeding and all of that, the anemia, cold, just shivering. And I generally run hot. So for me to be shivering and stuff like that, like, and I'm like, oh, it's okay, I'll just power through it. Like, no, like, it's okay to just listen to your body.
So my final question for you is, what can we do as a community to raise awareness about fibroids and support other women who are going through this?
I think it's important for us to just know, like, it's not our fault, because I wondered, like, did I do something? Did I eat the wrong things? There's a lot of different things that we feel like are connected to, did I put too much hair product? When I was a kid, perms, all of that thing. And recognizing, like, as the doctor said, it occurs in black women. It's just what it is. Listening to other black women, we have our experiences and our symptoms, and understanding, like, man, I understand what you're going through. Like, I've been there. Like, take your rest, or, you know, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Like I said, I would be incapacitated the entire weekend. Like, I would literally just be laying in bed. And that's when most people want to hang out, right, on the weekends. And I'm like, guys, I can't do it. Or if I would literally be going to the bathroom every hour to make sure, like, I wasn't bleeding through I was bleeding through my jeans. Like, it was so much, right? So, like, just, I could have told my friends, like, hey, guys, this is what I'm experiencing. But I was too ashamed to. Like, there was a level of shame attached to it. Because, yeah, I felt like I can get through this. But knowing, like, it's okay if you can't. And it's okay to call on your sister to help you.
Yeah, you were suffering silently.
I was, but not anymore.
I'm so sad for those moments you experienced by yourself, right? While being in community, being alone but together. Yeah.
And I had a lot of back pain too. I had one of the fibroids was pushing on my bladder, so I was constantly going to the bathroom. So it was just almost like, there was a level of embarrassment, right? Like, I'm like, oh guys, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I would justify, you guys know I drink a lot of water. But it's like, I could have said, look, I have this thing pushing against my bladder, making me go to the bathroom. Like, just being honest. Having that vulnerability, that's what it is. Being vulnerable enough to share.
Hoping you practicing more vulnerability now.
I know. This is the first time I've talked about this publicly. So,
really?
Yes.
Well, thank you for doing it here.
Thank you.
Adreiona, our conversations are always so meaty. Like, I just appreciate who you are and what you bring to this world, and continue to share your voice.
Thank you.
Definitely. It's powerful, and other Black women need to hear it.
Thank you.
Especially outside of social media. So start gathering people together.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, man. So what I'm taking away from you is don't suffer in silence when you are struggling in your health, and tell somebody. Like, actually tell your friends, because they may be going through it too.
And what's interesting, 3 of my friends were going through the same thing.
And none of y'all told each other.
It was so interesting. And I'm like, why could we not have had these conversations? We could have all been helping each other in those moments. So,
A lesson learned, huh? Whew, Adreiona. Well, sincere thanks to you, Adreiona, for making time to sit with me today and share your experiences about living with fibroids, going through the surgery, and your choice to do so. We're going to talk about that, doctor, later. But on the other side of the break, I'll be back with Jahlisa Murphy, a doula living with fibroids. Stay with us.
Paseo Boricua, marked by 2 huge metal Puerto Rican flags arching over a section of Division Street, are a proud historical and ongoing imprint of Puerto Rican identity here in Humboldt Park. I'm Hugo Balta. On the next episode of Sazón de Illinois, we'll sample the stories, culture, and cuisine of a family-owned business that has given this neighborhood its flavor for nearly 4 decades.
Our final guest, Jahlisa Murphy, is the proud owner of Be Affirmed Doula Services. With a background rooted in social work and a heart for nurturing, she dedicated her life to supporting families during one of the most transformative experiences of their lives, bringing a child into the world. Jahlisa represents a different but equally powerful journey when it comes to living with fibroids. While many women opt for surgery to alleviate the symptoms, Jahlisa has decided to manage her fibroids without undergoing surgery. Jahlisa, welcome to Behind the Confident Smile.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here and willing to share how you are managing life with fibroids.
Yes.
So take us back to when you first recognized something was different about your body.
I started my period at 9. So 9 years old. I'm the youngest of 5, so 3 other girls. So I saw them have their cycles. I would say high school though. Like, it got really painful not being able to be in school all day. I'm on the floor. Like, I'm not going to the next class because I'm in that much pain. But it was normalized. Like, I had the 7-day period, 7 days plus sometimes. The
In
heavy
high school?
bleeding. Yes, in high school. I started at 9, but high school was when, like, the pain kicked in, and it got to be a lot more to it. But it was normalized. That was a part of being a girl. That was a part of being on your period. Congratulations.
It's like,
Right?
did your sisters like have 7-day periods?
No, theirs wasn't as heavy and some wasn't as long. And it was just, she started earlier. It's just different, but it's normal. It's another variation of normal is what I understood it to be at the time. With the information I had, very limited. But that was just, it was normalized. But yeah.
So how long did you go until you knew what was happening?
I, of course, after you get out the pediatrician phase,
Right.
Started going to OB, went away to college, and all the information at the time, they're just like, just take birth control, they'll make it better. And that was more so just managing the pain of periods. We didn't know fibroids existed. You know, we hadn't done any tests or anything to explore what it was. So it was just ER visit after ER visit of something isn't right. And so another period came along, and this was even after college of coming back here. And I called my boyfriend, my husband now, of like, I gotta go to the hospital. So he picked me up from work, went to the ER. There's like, oh, it's just cysts that ruptured. So I figured that, I found out I had cysts on my ovaries, and they just ruptured during my period. So I was just managing heat packs, wearing a diaper, a pad, underwear, diaper, all of it. And so I didn't get the diagnosis until 2020.
Just recently?
Yeah, 2020.
So how many years this been?
That was over 15 years. Yeah.
Of being in pain?
Of being in pain.
Of heavy bleeding?
Ibuprofen.
Of probably going through a lot of clothes?
A lot of clothes, ibuprofen, Advil, just doing it. 2020, I learned because I had to have an emergency surgery for something else. So we were pregnant. We were going for our first ultrasound. Doctor didn't see what he needed to see. So we got sent to do another ultrasound. And it's like, okay, we're going to see the baby. It's going to be great. And they're like, the baby's in your tube. And you're having an ectopic pregnancy. I had no pain. From what we know, ectopic pregnancy is really painful. I had no pain at all. And it was August 2020. I'm by myself. My doctor is amazing. He let my husband in the back door. So he made sure he got to be with me. So they did the surgery, the laparoscopy. I got the robot surgery too, where they went in to remove the tube because it expanded so far, and there was already some amount of internal bleeding. So they removed the tube, and then after surgery, he's like, you have endometriosis, and there's some fibroids in there. To me, that is heavy, but at first I was relieved. I was like,
finally know what was
there's
going
words.
on.
There's a language for it now. Now we have an answer, which hopefully means we got a solution. But if anything, I was relieved. And he kind of looked at me crazy, like, you okay? Did the medicine wear off? And I was like, no, like, thank you, because I knew something wasn't right. But I finally found an OB that would listen and take the time to explain things. And when my husband goes, he will grab a sheet of paper and just start drawing. And this is what it looks like, and this is where it is, just to make sure, like, I was comfortable and we understood what was happening. But at that point, I didn't manage with, birth control or anything anymore. Birth control made me have a period for 6 months at one point. So I managed a lot
6 months.
6 months straight.
A flow.
Some variation. And of course, comes with anemia. I'm anemic.
And what did your doctor say? Or did you go?
That was before I found the OB that
listened.
Got the diagnosis, that listened, that's been supportive. That was before. So that was in college. So maybe 2010 is when I did the depot and bled for 6 months. And that was supposed to slow down the bleeding, I thought we were going to stop. So it just brought on more symptoms for years of just trying to figure it out. Eventually having conversations with my family and knowing that one of my older sisters was living with fibroids. I talked to one of my aunts about it, and she's like, yeah, so-and-so had the same thing. They had woman issues. That was just how it was categorized. So assuming they didn't have the language for it, they didn't have the diagnosis themselves for what they were experiencing. It was just woman issues. So that's how I got diagnosed, was from having the laparoscopic surgery and having to go internal, and then identifying there were fibroids and endometriosis there too.
Wow.
Yes. Wow.
Wow. Who we need to fire? Like, I think I'm on like a fire spree. So since 2020 to now, which has been 4 years, what has life looked like for you now with living with endometriosis and fibroids?
It has been a journey. I've done a lot of like just diving into research to see what would work. And I've kind of taken the holistic route of trying different teas and herbs. I learned about like Goddess Collection is one brand, it's Black owned, and she has a tea uniquely for that fibroid fighter. And that helps as well with some of them maybe shrinking. My periods aren't as awful and painful. They're way more manageable, where I got 3-4 days of bleeding and I'm like, okay, did it passed already? So that makes it more manageable of living with it. And my OB also of like, hey, the size that they are now, they're pretty small. There's 2 or 3 of them, but they're not in a place to where it should interfere with pregnancy or shouldn't interfere with pregnancy. So I've just decided to leave them where they are. They're not causing any more significant issues now that we know how to manage. And hormones, like that was another thing I didn't know, was just eating certain foods and things with hormones may not have the best effect in terms of some of the symptoms. It may exacerbate some of the symptoms for me and my body and how I experienced it. So I'm just trying to take in all the information and holding on to what works for me in that moment.
Yeah. Now you said eating things with hormones. Are you talking about chicken, hamburgers, like
protein with hormones? Yes. Also, I didn't mention I had another surgery in there. I had a breast reduction, and so I kept having all of this like excessive growth. I was at a K. Yes, my little frame was carrying around 10 extra pounds, and they removed 10 pounds. But that was one thing that was discussed was, have you considered the hormones in things that we're consuming? If it's dairy, if it's meat, then yes, that was a big thing. And once I slowed down or removed it at one point, I noticed a difference. Like I definitely noticed a difference. So that was my exploration with the hormones, with having the extra growth of breast tissue and just going that far to a K where I didn't gain weight anywhere else. It was just all up top. I was tilting over.
Oh, man.
So noticing that's when the conversation came up about hormones and food, and just taking note of what it feels like in my body and the effect that it had.
So is your doctor also in alignment with natural remedies, or you took it upon yourself to say this is the route I want to take?
That's something I took up on myself. And since becoming a doula, I got exposure to even more information and knowledge about holistic things for our body. But that's been a self-exploration journey for sure. And Ayurveda medicine, my therapist mentioned it. And I was like, what is that? And it's Western medicine. And I went to see an Ayurveda doctor, and they just kind of said, hey, here's a plan. Like, let's try these different things of diet changes. Let's see what happens. And I saw some improvements just from the feedback and the little bit of insight that they shared as well. So I had to seek out all this information on my own.
So what is your diet? Like, give me an example of what a day in the life of eating like Jahlisa.
Now I'm not saying I'm nobody's nutritionist.
Just for you.
But for me, it varies. I don't eat enough, honestly. I'm going to be honest about that. I don't eat enough. But for me, like I lean more into like oatmeal. At one point I had an aversion to meat. It was weird. But after my first pregnancy, like I didn't like the smell of meat. I couldn't stand it for a little bit. So for almost a year, it was kind of a pescatarian type of a diet. And then, now I've definitely gone back to meat. But if I do shop for meat, like we try to look for organic. meat if it's available, and lean towards that. I notice I have a reaction for fried food, fast food. Like, it exacerbates what my period's gonna be like for the next month. I'll notice what that connection looks like. But I do still eat all the things, but I just do notice, and I try to slow down and substitute those things when I can. Yeah.
During this, I would say 15-year plus journey, right? When you look back, did that have an impact on your mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, because I didn't believe my pain was real sometimes. Like, it was is it really that bad kind of feeling, right? Where you know you don't have the energy to get to work. You're in pain. It's uncomfortable. And I still make my way. And I'd sit at my desk like, okay, now the cramps are in my legs. Now they're traveling. And then it's like, okay, now I should go home because now I've messed up my clothes and some other things. But it was just invalidating my own experience mentally and emotionally. So I've done a lot of work with my therapist of just acknowledging what I'm feeling in my body. Just acknowledging it. That's uncomfortable. That's painful. That hurts. That doesn't feel good. But I think I always overrode that a lot. In school, we had perfect attendance, and of course, that's great. But you went to school through a lot, right? Like, you got there, but I was in pain a lot of times. I probably should have been in the bed with a heating pad or something. So emotionally, that's been a journey of just unpacking that and realizing, like, how I feel in my body and being honest about that. I have days where my husband's like, all right, here's a plate. Don't even ask if you eat. You know I haven't eaten. I haven't come downstairs. I'm still working. I'm doing something. So having the support around me, it means a lot. Even when he does go to doctor's appointments, I'm like, you're right, I did forget about that one thing. He's like, yep, she said that hurt too, doctor.
You got
so
an
he holds me
accountable.
accountable.
Yes.
I got an advocate who has a great memory, so that's helpful. But yeah, I think it's been an emotional journey of just acknowledging, like, how I feel without hitting the override button. Because sometimes we want to be every woman, and I ain't every woman. But sometimes we try to be.
It's not possible.
It's not. So sometimes it's that, just acknowledging you're tired. You're not feeling it. Your iron is real low. Go sit down, right? Like, go take your vitamins and sit down. So just still learning as I go and holding myself accountable, having people to hold me accountable as well.
Wow.
Yes.
I think about your sisters and your parents and your aunts and, all the folks, right? In closing, what would you say to them now, like, about women's issues? Right?
I would say use your whole voice. Ask questions. Don't settle on not getting an answer. Figure it out. And push until you do. Just use your full voice. And have conversations about it. Because you never know who it can help and who you'll be ministering to, educating, and supporting. So use your full voice, I think, is what I would say.
Have you found now that you have language about what's going on with you that is freeing other people to figure out what's happening with them that's around you?
Absolutely. I feel like that's my work every day as a doula. I focus on postpartum. Like, I love my postpartum mamas and babies. And that's the biggest conversation, is the things no one told you. It's completely normal. Having the language of like, yep, we just talked about that yesterday. You're not the only one. It happens. So I think it definitely has given me language to just hold space for myself and my experiences and other people's experiences as well.
Well, Jahlisa, thank you.
Thank you.
You're a survivor, okay? That's a lot.
ma'am.
That's a lot to go through, but I'm glad that you're here to share the story and continue to eat well. Continue to eat well for you. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing parts of your life with fibroids and living with them and managing them and your self-discovery of what works for you.
Yes.
That's what I'm taking away from you. What works for you? And you got to seek it out.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side of a short break.
I'm Ricky Watson, inviting you to join me for the next critical conversation, where we focus on the importance of mental health, making sense of your purpose, and doing the impossible. Tune in for our opportunity to be inspired, enlightened, and encouraged. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
As we wrap up this week's special edition with a live studio audience of Behind the Confident Smile, it's crucial to acknowledge the unique challenges that Black women face when it comes to fibroids. Research shows that Black women are more likely to develop fibroids at a younger age with larger and more numerous growths. They're also 2 to 3 times more likely to experience reoccurring fibroids or complications after treatment. Surgery is another factor we can't ignore. Black women are at least twice as likely to have a hysterectomy compared to white women, and they tend to receive more invasive treatments at younger ages. It's an alarming pattern that reflects the broader health disparities in our community. Another contributing factor is stress. Black women in the United States face higher levels of chronic stress due to societal pressures, racial discrimination, and health inequities. While research on a direct link between stress and fibroids is still limited, studies have shown that women who experience frequent racial discrimination or high levels of stress are more likely to develop fibroids. It's a complex issue that we must address on multiple levels, from healthcare access to environmental justice. To all the women watching, if you suspect you might have fibroids or are experiencing symptoms like heavy or irregular bleeding, pelvic pain, or a feeling of fullness in your belly, please reach out to your healthcare provider. An ultrasound can confirm the diagnosis, and treatment options range from managing the symptoms to surgical intervention. Remember, treatment for fibroids varies, and it's important to find what works best for you. You are not alone in this journey, and together we can advocate for better care, more research, and greater awareness. Thank you, Dr. Clark White, Adreiona, Jahlisa, and our live studio audience for joining us for this critically important conversation. And special shout out to our friends that drove here from Madison, Wisconsin, representing the Foundation for Black Women Wellness. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for tuning in Chicago and beyond. Let's keep the conversation going and make sure every Black woman has the knowledge and support she needs. Keep smiling, and I'll see you again real soon.